We're in episode 8.
Woo!
Yeah,
Oh,
change the screen.
have we changed the detail because it's still telling us?
No. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Social Pillar.
Hey!
Hello.
Welcome back, everyone. Hey, guys. How you doing?
Always
Good.
lovely to be back
Yes.
with all the beautiful people.
Welcome to the Social Pillar, everyone. The ongoing conversation we have about the value of role-playing games, craft, culture, and communities around the world. We have our 3 forever DMs, if we should call it this way. My name's Ian. I am from Roleplay Experience. I hand over to my colleagues over here. Thea.
Right, me, yes, because where I have you, my camera is not beside you at all. Hello, I am OMGM. It is a real pleasure to be here, as always, hanging out with 2 of the most beautiful minds. I'm not going to comment on the souls. Definitely the most beautiful minds.
Please don't comment. No. Probably a good
Amazing.
idea.
We are soulful people. We are
And to
creators,
you.
and that's what we do. My name is Jared, also known as the GM Chef, and
Woo!
I'm so excited to continue our conversation this evening about AI tools, chats, and how they may or may not interact with role-playing games in a good or positive or a negative way. So that's what we're going to do tonight.
Wow, exciting.
Mhm.
I'm looking off to the side. I'm just doing a few notes and reminding myself, what is a thing? What is a game? What is an AI?
Yes.
Talk about artificial intelligence. I'm just doing up my natural intelligence. I may have failed the role. I'll see myself out.
Well, actually, on that note, for everyone who may not have been here last week or who wants a quick refresher, we are actually reviewing what we did last week. Last week we had AI, the use of artificial intelligence in role-playing games, and we had an experiment, which Jared's going to give us a brief in a moment, kind of a recap of the madcap adventures we went on last week and discoveries we made. And today is a discussion, a look back on that, not just actually on what happened last week, but also what does that mean? What does it lead to? What some surprises came from that? And what could this mean for role playing games online or elsewhere in future? So we're very keen to see what you have thoughts in the chat as well. We've taken some of the great ideas and thoughts that came from last week's conversation. So thank you guys. And we'll be able to quote you on there later on as we reinvestigate this. But if you have anything else to say, please add it to the chat tonight. We'd love to see you there.
Absolutely.
But without further ado, we might jump across to Jared for a bit of a recap on what happened last week. Yes.
I mean,
Drum roll.
Thea, I think we did have a little bit of a thing we wanted to say before that, just about, Thea wanted to establish like a little bit of like boundaries,
The ethics sort of
and,
stuff?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you want to just put a starting
Yeah.
cap on that, and we'll see where the
Yeah, for sure.
conversation.
This is what
goes.
happens when we make a plan, my dear friends, is we fail to stick to it.
Exactly.
100%. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that I really am very cognizant of when we're looking at AI is all of the discussion around that. And I think that it's really important that when we are talking about it, we don't ignore the ethics of AI and the ethics of use, because there are a lot of people that are very concerned about what it means to their creativity, to the value of art and artistry. And I don't think that we should ignore any of that. But at the same time, I don't think that we should say, oh, well, we shouldn't use AI, or we can't use it because it may have been trained unethically. I think that that's kind of trying to put Pandora back in the box. Yes, I'm mixing my metaphors. Come at me. And I think that we can't do that. The tool is out there and it offers a lot of opportunities for people that perhaps have got limitations on the capability to be artistic in, physically, or people who are uncertain about language. They might have a second language. There is so much that AI can do to be really, really helpful. To say that we're not going to use it simply because it may have been trained in an unethical way, I think is possibly a bit naive, and I could face criticism for that, but I think it is. At the same time, I think we need to, now that we've kind of come out of our childhood, like with AI, right? And this is something that I think we talked about as well, is for a while, the last couple of years, AI is a cool toy and a new thing, and everyone's excited, and we're all experimenting. We're putting everything into it, and we're seeing what comes out of it. I think we're moving out of that now. I think we're far more mature in the way that we can look at how AI is used. And I think we need to start demanding that if we're going to use this tool, we want to know where it comes from. We want to know how you've trained this particular language pattern recognition bot, for example, how you've trained an artistic creativity bot AI, because we should be ethical. If somebody says, hey, use my stuff, sure, use their stuff. But if somebody's work is stolen, I think that's where it becomes very problematic. But it's not about the tool, it's about how it is made, I think, world according to me. But I think that is something that I always have sort of top of my mind when we're thinking about AI and how it can be used, and kind of may have jumped on my soapbox a bit and insisted that we did talk about that. Because I know some people say there's a lot of places that have banned AI art and have banned that. And I think that is perhaps not the only response.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that you brought it up in particular, because it's the idea. I mean, it can be just a reaction, an emotional reaction, and I'd rather not lead with fear. I'd rather lead with curiosity, but within the bounds of, okay, well then, how do we shape this to be something as a tool for positive use and positive effect on the world? So, and it's like it's like any tool. It's how it's used. It's not actually the purpose of it. There's very few kind of tools in the world that are actually used for killing. Like guns were one of the first thing in the world that was actually used specifically to harm another thing.
Yeah, that didn't have another purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't have another purpose. And so it's like, well, this is the purpose of this, is to be able to emulate what intelligent beings can do. And that's phenomenal. And it's like, well, then how do we help nurture that? How do we help shape that so that it is something positive for the world? And I think it's absolutely something we should, I think, set those expectations, establish that's the way we're looking forward to getting involved in this. So thank you. I'm really glad you did. And I think there's some really interesting conversations we can have because of that. So instead of just tar and feathering it and just kicking it out, like, when it hasn't, there's no reason to, let's try to avoid creating a reason to, I think, is exactly the purpose.
Yeah, be
So,
intentionally ethical.
yeah.
I do apologize if my dog is coming through.
That's all right.
He has
We
strong
can't hear him.
opinions on ethics, but also people walking past my house.
No, he's all
We've
good.
got to self-apologizing. Yada Dog is part of our
It's
channel.
part of the
And this is
experience.
it. So
Dog.
guys, be aware.
Ian dog.
Ian Dog is here. So, and it's like, I look forward to hearing when we hear
No,
the howl.
we can't really. Yeah, we can't really hear him. It's all good. It's nice to see him running around in the background.
Yeah, you see this movement in the background. One day we'll do a stream with D and Dog. We'll have pet cam. I think that's a good way to go.
Awesome.
Pet care.
Speaking
I
of-
think that's it.
Speaking of random things that come up, Jared, what happened in the game?
Happened in the game. So many things happen.
Yeah.
That's it. So at the end of the day, what we tried to do and somewhat achieved was have ChatGPT, specifically ChatGPT 4 that I recently got access to, run a game of D&D is what we asked it. Run a game of D&D with me and my 3 friends. It immediately said, okay, I'll be the dungeon master. What are your characters? Who are they? We introduced our characters, and then the adventure began. It started off with a very generic-esque sort of you're in the city of Eldemont, you're in this tavern called the Laughing Dragon, and a middle-aged woman with a stern expression gives us a quest hook. And we could do with that what we pleased. And so the back and forth between our collaborative input of a request or a statement or whatever it was, then was replied in kind by the AI. And much like some tables that I've run where lots of table talk happens and deliberation and deciding, and then finally they go, right, this is what we want to do, versus a live role play, very much a speak in character, more kind of a table.
Yeah.
And that's what we ended up having. Plus, of course, we were deciding how we were then going to next engage with the AI tool. And then we did learn that it had terminology that it recognized, because we did say D&D, which is the most recognized role-playing system. But it did not get into specifics. It did not apply any specific rules. It didn't bring up any checks or rolls, and it did actually, when we said something like we pick the locks with thieves tools or use a spell or something, we said, Ian, the tiefling druid casts a flame strike on the door. There was no spell, no roll made or check. I wouldn't really ask for that as a DM. Unless I needed to know how much damage it was doing, right? Because door's not going to go anywhere. It's just how hard can you hit it. But the more and more we played, we even asked it eventually to roll for initiative. And it said, note, in square brackets, it did start with, as the battle with the thieves unfolds, the party members roll for initiative to determine the order in which they'll act during combat. The enemies should also do that. But it said, note, as a text-based AI, I can't roll dice for you. You'll need to roll the initiative for yourselves or decide the order based on your character's dexterity scores or other factors. So it gave us options, even though it knew how to technically do it. But it wasn't giving us any D&D rules. It wasn't telling us how to play. And I think we all enjoyed that. The looseness, the less restrictiveness, the open-endedness. But at the same time, towards the end when the combat was, okay, so you do these things. And what else would you like to do? There was no reaction. There was no threat. And of course, everybody who understands a good story, a good role-playing game, needs both beautifully relaxing, hilarious, and lovely moments, but it's mostly built around combat. So where's the tension? Where's the risk? And of course, combat isn't the only tension and risk in any story. But that's kind of where we ended up. And now we get to pick that apart in a nice way.
So we did at some point split the party, and we did do a couple of D&D things. We tried to sneak around. One of us decided to disguise themselves. We kind of settled on a stealthy approach to try and sneak in, which we then completely threw out the window and ran in one of us.
Deliberately
to
test it as well.
Yeah. Swords blazing. And then we ran out of time. So we never actually got to resolve what happened to this poor, poor woman's family heirloom.
So she says. We were still a little bit suspicious of the fact that she was setting this up, as well as seemed to know a lot more about it and be linked
went
to
the
very
hideout
thieves.
of the people who stole. I wanted to talk about that when we get to it. But
She seemed noble.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, she did. And actually, when we tried, let's talk about one thing then, which was about.
Oh, can I jump in real quick? Because I just had a thought, and if I don't jump on it now, it will leave my head. Let's be honest.
Yeah, go for it. I've got them all written down anyway, the things we can go through. So give it a go.
So what I just realized, and it's not a particularly earth-shattering revelation, it's a language pattern recognition, pattern producing thing.
Yeah.
It's not programmed to apply rules other than language rules.
At this stage.
So what it is doing, at this stage. So what it is doing is pulling patterns of things that have been put together before. So it's actually not surprising it wasn't applying rules. It was merely telling us stuff.
Yeah.
Like, because there's no algorithm in. Oh, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I don't know if there is an algorithm inside it or not that can actually apply those if and or rules to, or it just puts language together.
Yeah. To expand on that, obviously as a game master, we get given a tiny little table or a little thing. I mean, depends on the system or the thing, where it says, this is an easy roll, this is a very hard roll, this is deadly, etc. And we get given a scale. So with Dungeons and Dragons, a 10 or less, like if something's going to be a DC difficulty class of 10 or less, you may as well not even really roll, in my opinion. Sometimes it's always like, again, the rolling of the dice, if we just kind of distill that, serves two purposes, as again the risk reward, the what if, yes, no, and it also provides an opportunity for the player to attempt something and they're not necessarily sure what that is or how it's going to resolve, and you as the game master can take that and interpret it any way you want. Did they have a really good idea and you just want to make them roll for it? There's so many reasons to call on that. Every DM is going to have that nuance, going to have that flavor and how they determine their scale of difficulty. You know, and
Yeah.
again, you can't set an unrealistic difficulty class either. I've played games where people do have an 11 plus 11 to their D20 roll, and that means I could
Wow.
technically set a DC 30 difficulty. I could do it.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's not
Mhm.
giving them a natural 20 automatic success. That's a
Mhm.
19 or a 20 success. So
Mm.
again, the
Yeah.
AI is never going to know that unless it knows and
Yep.
fully understands the rules, how that interacts with a player, how the character
Yeah.
sheet is then interpreted through levels, because
Mm.
you know that was a 10th or 11th level character and they just had insane
Yeah.
stats. So yeah.
That's a really good point. The whole idea, like we started off, I don't know, we never actually specified one that we were going to shift towards a Dungeons and Dragons style game, although I have a feeling that was in our unconscious. That was a way
Yeah.
that we were kind of
Medieval
going to
fantasy
shift
role-playing
Yeah.
towards.
game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely, a high fantasy role playing game of some
Mm.
kind. So that was one thing, but we thought, okay, we will start testing it there. We did talk
Mm.
about that as a
Yeah. Yeah.
possibility. And we'll talk about that in a second, because you said about the honourable woman. That was what I was going to
Yeah.
follow up. We'll get back to that.
Yep.
Because you were saying just now about how it recognised certain rules. And it was interesting because I got that feeling that we were also kind of coming into this as if we were introductory adventurers. In fact, I think that's how it started off. It was meant to be
Mm.
this kind of introductory sort of thing, which kind of, if we're looking at it as Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah.
there are certain understandings and expectations. That means we
Mm.
are limited with what powers we have, and where there's blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Things like Pass Without Trace is a few levels up, which is something we could try, and that's a specific thing that it
Yeah.
started to recognize. But then
Mm.
we started testing it. That's why actually I deliberately wanted to, when we said let's just test it out with the door, and I thought Flame Strike, 5th level spell, like really ridiculous, and up there, what will it
Yep.
do? And it just went with it. And it was like,
Yeah.
and not only that, which was great, so it just went with what we chose to throw at it in a way,
Mm.
which is cool, because then it's really about what we're creating
Mm.
together. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter the rules. In a way, we're just trying to actually have a really fun time
Yeah.
with what's possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the other side of it as well, which was a separate thing, was the sass that it brought in to kind of hint at us, okay, well, you've blown up a door, which is a less subtle way of going about things. So it actually had the presence of mind to say something like that, and then say, by the way, you may have alerted the thieves inside
That,
there,
that's
which was
it.
like,
Yeah.
that's a real DM thing to do, which was fascinating. So
Yeah.
that was amazing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
obviously a language thing. Like it
Yeah.
is
And that's a
first
real
and
DM
foremost
thing to
supposed to. Yeah, it's supposed to understand that, and it is a very DM.
It's a real
Yeah.
DM thing to say. But I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm running. This isn't exactly what we wanted to talk about, but I'm just running down this idea. It's so fascinating, and maybe we talk about this at another stream, another season. Is the difference between creativity and putting patterns together and see what kind of comes out when you shake it all, and following rules. And there's a real difference there, because I think, and you hit it on the head, Ian, 100%, is that we're talking about, we were having fun. You know, we were
Yeah.
playing with this new thing. We knew that it should have access to some tropes, not an understanding, that's humanizing a computer. If I suddenly shut down, the computers actually have been humanized, but let's move on. It's that kind of creativity, whereas rules. So in a video game, you program the rules in, right? So you've got the
Yeah.
story and you've got that, but there are rules and there are, formulas of if this, then that. But that's not
Logic.
what this,
Yeah.
logic. But that's not what this tool is for. Which then goes down the line of, well, you can use it for creativity. If you get 3 people and an AI chatbot, and we're all throwing in our ideas, and then we pull something out of that, is that creativity? Is it not? I say it is, because we put work into it, put ideas into it. But this,
Yeah.
I feel, is going to move our conversation a long way beyond our initial analysis of the game. But I think maybe it's something we should come back to.
I think it's related because particularly, I mean, I'm going to go back to that Flame Strike thing, because that was a very left field shift to how things were going.
Yeah.
But it went with it, not just with my character. I remember clearly how it then said Thea then boots in the door. Like you were going along with this, even though we'd not made any specific requests to say Thea wants to do this to follow up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it then extrapolated from
Mm.
that to assume, okay, we all agree with this. This is the way we want to
Yeah.
go. That's
Have you
interesting.
guys
Yeah.
ever done that
Yeah.
as a DM though? Like obviously like there are some players that you do need to kind of a little bit of
Mm.
a little bit of a push, a little bit of a guide,
Mm.
if you would, like be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, well, like I think that's kind of like that whole situation in my mind as a DM, if I was to come across this, is like it does start by saying, and I've actually popped it up on stream again. With this knowledge, the party can proceed in one of several ways. So it has
Yeah.
Mm.
prepared for a stealthy
Yeah.
approach as a DM may do.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
again, what DM ever, knows what's going to happen? But again, like let's say
Right.
you're green as this DM would be for its first time in its first 15, 20 minutes. And it has gone, right, well, I have some ideas of what you could do. You could attempt to pick the lock, or you could use a spell, and it suggests actual D&D spells. But it
Mhm.
also
Yeah.
gives you an open-ended option that is, again,
Mm.
still stealthy. So when it does give you the sass,
Mm.
and then it does also
Mm.
pull other players in, that's an interesting thing to me, because you do sometimes need to go,
Yeah.
right, who else could be engaged in this scene? What other character,
Yeah.
NPC, or player could be a
Mm.
nice
Yeah.
chemistry?
Yeah.
So
Catalyst and
is that what it was
also adding to the
thinking?
dynamic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mm.
Is that what it?
And
Sorry, is that what
yeah.
it determined?
Well, it's interesting because you asked the question, have you done that as a DM? And
Mm,
I think we do that based off
Mm.
what our players are like. So if you have someone who is very shy
Yeah.
and is not comfortable talking in a group, I will tend to go, hi. So in this situation, you could do this or you could do that. Whereas other players, and I think we're probably like that, will have 1,000 plans and don't need that level of
Mm.
prompting. But
Mm.
picking up on what the DM, I'm trying to come up
Call
with a
it
good acronym. Chat,
chat
if you find a
DM.
good acronym, yeah,
Chat
chat
DM
yeah,
sounds
DM.
good.
TM, PT.
DM chat sounds like a DJ. But what it was sort of doing is because it did that with Purdy's character as well. It said
Yeah.
Purdy continues on. It actually said this is what Purdy will do, and I think that was a bit earlier in the game.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, I think I
That's
felt like I cut you off, Ian.
no, that's okay. That's no. This is. I'm going to jump into the whole honourable woman thing. We're going to come back to that in a sec.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of what would be interesting
Mm,
looking ahead is we spent such a little time with it. And Jared, I
mm,
like what you said. When you know your group, when you know
Mhm.
different players,
Yeah.
which happens over time, you know the quiet ones who don't need to say so much because when they speak, they'll know exactly what they want. But then there's also quiet ones who are a little shy and they need some encouragement. And then you've got
mm,
the ones who run off at the mouth at anything. And you're like, okay, right,
Mm.
let's pull this in here
yeah.
and have a look at what happens. Here's the repercussions of what you've said.
Mm,
And it's like how you deal with those. I
mm,
would be fascinated to see over time with a specific group and an AI GM generator, how, if it can recognize the different
mm,
characters and the idiosyncrasies of their
mm,
ongoing interaction. It's a tough one because you've got one person who's entering the
yeah.
information, because then it does
Yeah.
always rely
Mm,
on, you say
yeah.
in your case, Jared, you were doing it last time as well. So it's always relying on, and it'll build off your style. If
Mm,
it was multiple people, that would be interesting. Would it respond
Mm.
differently, and would it retain that memory
yeah.
to then extrapolate that before the person even writes something? It's like it
Oh
gives
Well,
them
yeah.
that's
some
machine
suggestions.
learning.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's never
yeah,
Yeah.
gonna like again, like unless we all had cameras and face recognition and
Mhm.
heartbeat
yeah,
monitors and everything. It's also not
Mm.
gonna know what the hell is exciting and what's fun. We had a good time
Well,
because
we'd
we
have to
know how to
teach
have a
it.
good time. But yeah, like
Yeah.
that's the thing, right?
yeah,
Is like
Yeah.
I've also had a discussion as a chef myself.
Mm.
I've had discussions with people who, on Reddit and stuff, where people said, "Tell me your job, and I guarantee you a robot or an AI could replicate it." And I've said, okay, yes, once we have fed it every
Mm.
single flavor profile and combination out there, which we cannot do in
Mhm.
any feasible
yeah,
manner, sure, then it can
Mm.
have my job. But until then, I know what tastes good, and
mm,
I'm not,
Mm.
we don't need it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think it's
no,
absurd.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
again, like we're talking about creative stuff, cooking as well.
Mm.
That is just, again, more than cooking. It is nourishing. It is feeding
Yeah.
and fueling. So do you want something that is like, again, there's going to be people who do that, and we
Mm.
already have mass production of all of that sort of stuff. But that
Yep.
is, to me, completely soulless food. And you
Mm.
know, the magic ingredient is love, and good luck getting that.
I
Yeah.
think that's a really important thing. It's that emotion. And I think we don't understand emotion well enough, where it comes from, how to create it, how to define it. So we can't train any machine to do the same thing. And I think that's one of the key discussions around machine learning, around AI, is that we can only teach it things that we can define. And there is a huge range of experience that we cannot define in any language.
That's the key there. You said experience.
Mm.
It's like a
Mm.
machine is not sensing the world the way we sense it, let
Mm.
alone if you want to talk about the five senses that we recognize.
Yep.
I'm not even going to go into
Yeah.
intuition. That's a whole other thing.
Yep.
But let's just say those five. I guarantee the way both of you look with your eyes at the world is different to how I do.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
And that's not just that, it's then how do you interpret it to then
Mm.
to then express that to
Yeah.
others, which is why it's beautiful that you get individual expression, and that also that a
Mm.
group with a variety of individual expressions coming together and
Mm.
creating something, it's
Mm.
not the same. So
Mm.
anyway, I was going to get back to the honorable woman. So
Yeah.
the reason I mentioned that was because you specifically said you wanted to use insight
Mm.
and to
Mm.
gain an insight into her.
Mm.
And she said, and that was actually linked to a rule in Dungeons and Dragons about the skill of insight,
Insight.
which is
Yeah.
also used in other similar games, but it actually referred to that when we saw that, and we were like
Mm.
going, brains blown. Basically, this is amazing. So it knew what we were trying to say because it linked to that
Mm.
rule. But the other side of it was it actually showed that she was, we believed she was
Mm.
honorable about it.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay. And that
Yeah.
shapes the way we look about it. So, I mean, that's for
Mm.
the ongoing game. But what I love about that is that, and it's kind of looking back to what you're saying before, Jared, about well, actually, all of us have been talking about
Mm.
the random chance element, which it
Mm.
doesn't have, so that
Yeah.
we don't know what level of risk there was. If it happened to be we rolled a d20, and if
Mm.
Thea rolled a 19, shall
Mm.
we say, and has
Mm.
maybe like even a +1 bonus, which is not huge, that's around 20. And then
Mm.
she says, and then the DM says, "Oh, you're very confident that she's telling the truth."
Yeah.
That's a whole different world to if you rolled a 2.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
then you go, "You're very confident she's telling the truth." It's exactly the same result with the
Yeah.
words, but the die roll, as a player, is
Mm.
very different. And that you may go, okay, there's a bit of you in the side thinking, well, I think I need to watch her a little bit more. But it's like the confidence and the
Mm.
security you'd feel if you'd rolled a 19 would be very
Mm.
different.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
find
That's what I
that's a
was trying to
part of the
get at
game I
before.
enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was trying to get
yeah.
at before. Sorry, I think I kind of lost my train of thought. Is when you do ask a player to roll, there is this suspense, don't know how it's
Mm.
going to go, but when it does land, you can get some security. You get anchored into the story world that you're going in because roll high, good result, hopefully, right? And again, there is that hope. There is that always that little bit of wanting, and then you roll the dice and you watch it scatter, etc. There's just the magic that is role playing, and we all understand it.
Mm.
But you can still get the same result. And is it cheating? Is it worse? Is it better? I argue not necessarily worse or better, because
It's
we
different.
enjoyed it. It's
Yeah.
different,
different.
and it's how you wanted
Yeah.
to
It's
have.
neither
It's
good
how
nor bad.
we wanted to have fun. We went in with a completely open mind, with the intention
Yeah.
of having fun. And if you do that with
Yeah.
any role playing game in any group, and you respect everybody's choices and decisions, you got a recipe for a good time. And if that's all you're after,
100%.
great. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the
yeah.
way, Kit Kat's asking for you, GM Chef, please add some more food analogies. She's loving it. She's on the
Amazing.
chat too.
Done.
And
I
am too.
literally had one. I've got one in the back pocket. So basically, rolling and not rolling is like me taking some flour and eggs or like, let's just say flour and water. Flour and
This is where I
water.
get hungry.
I can make pasta. I can make a tortilla. I can literally make bread once we add yeast. If I add an egg, I can make pasta. And sudden, and I can also have pesto and cheesy pasta, but I could also have a pesto cheesy sandwich, like, or
Yeah.
waffle or anything. So, are you enjoying these ingredients? Do you like jalapenos in your cheesy, crispy waffles? I do. Um, but that's it. Everybody's going to have a different experience, and it is literally that different flavors, combination of ingredients interpreted through a being. And I think we can all agree, at least for now, there is nothing that's going to compare through our senses, our known senses and otherwise, and the sense of feeling we get when we create and we see the reactions, and it's all live and it's fluid and it's grounded in reality. So,
Yeah.
is the AI ever going to understand what a physical world is? Is it ever going to understand that there are physical, real world people playing a make believe game? There's so many questions, so many questions. And I just wanted to add, in my other dabbling with these tools, I have asked it for very specific cool scenarios. Give me some cool spell jamming things that might happen in Spell Jamming Academy. And it comes up with crazy, great scenarios. So again, it's what you put in is what you get out. Because if we asked it to run us a spell jamming campaign, we would not have got generic city tavern thing, or we might have got generic city on a different planet in a different space tavern thing. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think that's interesting about sort of that going back to when we're talking about ethics and how things are trained and where information comes from, is the questions that we ask are really steering it towards what categories it's going to start drawing this information, these responses from. So if we said, I want you to run me a Spelljammer game, a Spelljammer campaign, then I think it would go, and again, I don't think ChatGPT was trained with Spelljammer because I don't think it came out afterwards. Who knows what's anyway. But I think that the questions that you ask can also skew your responses towards an ethical or less ethical data set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. It
Yeah.
kind of discussing this now kind of made me think. I'm looking at some of the other notes as well that people had left that we had written down. I thought it was interesting, like you said, about the kind of whatever sets up this AI has, for want of a better term, an agenda. I don't know if that's the right thing because it seems like it's a bit loaded and it can see more than that, but it's actually like, let's say it's shaped, like bias also has a loaded kind of connotation to it, but it is shaped by its experiences and its language and how it can express the person who is actually forming this, or people that are forming this AI and what they put in. So it was fascinating to see that was that AI and that was being shaped by us. And I wonder how much more it gets shaped by the interaction with us. That's one thing.
Yeah.
I just want to, one thing, let's bring up the SAS. That thing of
Can't let it
Yeah.
go, can you?
of like saying, well, you could do a less subtle way. It's like that's a particular way to respond,
Yeah,
as
It
opposed
is,
to
yeah.
take a more decides to take a more direct approach. Like, come on. Yeah, we did, because we're gonna choose our own goddamn path.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Not be railroaded. But I think that actually ties in, I think, as well to a comment I had, and we'll come back to the SAS. Is it was a little bit formulaic and stereotypical, the kind of adventure that it was pushing
yeah.
us down.
Yeah.
So I think that was, and that was very clear. But I was thinking that's kind of what new, I say baby DMs, but I don't mean that in a derogatory way. People that are new and are like kids playing with the world. They can be a
Beginner.
little bit like
Yeah.
that as well. Yeah.
A dungeon
I think
beginner.
that's interesting about, what is because there's a perception of what a beginner game is like too, which I find interesting because look at the Dungeons and Dragons movie. We haven't even seen it yet, but I'm getting a real feel for it. It's getting some really good reviews, which is
Yeah.
wonderful to hear, which is a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
But the idea of it, I think that what they sounded like they tried to do was to make it like a fun intro game of D&D where crap goes wrong. Like you choose really stupid things to do because you can. And it's like you have all of the fantasy tropes around there, and yet you're also, there's a lot of contemporary kind of understanding and expression that comes into it, and just tropes that we just love because that's where we are now. And I think I saw that in this. I saw that there was this sense of, we're going to have a bit of fun. It's not going to be the way, like it's going to be set in this kind of thing, but we'll go with you, and
Yeah.
we'll play with that. And I think
Yeah.
that's interesting. If you know that going in, that's great. If you want to set higher expectations, or not higher necessarily, just more specific expectations, like if you're wanting to run a Curse of Strahd campaign, like as a D&D campaign, that's just one different thing. That is not your standard fun, happy-go-lucky, ridiculous, stupid ideas campaign. That's a very different kind of thing. But I wonder if this would adapt to that. I don't know. It's just, that would be interesting.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's and it's an interesting point that's actually come up in the chat as well, is that sort of the people that are starting out as DMs do tend to run linear stories and have a plot in their head. And I think, which, we've all done that. They will go to the dungeon, they will fight the bad guys, they will rescue the princess, and it's the way it's how it's presented. If we relate that back to AI, it's been trained on all of that material, and there is far more out there, I would say, that is in that mode, rather than what I would say someone who's more comfortable with running games, to allow ambiguity, and to make it more random, or not following similar paths. And I think that's what we see, because I think that's probably what's prompted me reflecting back now. When I say it was formulaic, well, of course it's going to be formulaic, because it's an aggregation tool, right? And what is out there, now it sounds like I'm criticizing everybody who ever writes this stuff, and I'm not. But there's a lot of stuff when you are starting out that you put out there that this has probably been trained on, that is kind of formulaic.
I think it's actually, I don't think it's a negative thing at all. I think it's the whole idea of what are people expecting, because that's actually something else of what are you expecting to be in a D&D game. I love what you said. There was that thing also we talked about before about when a game begins. Jared, from your experience of doing this as well, you said that it often comes across, there are goblins attacking a town, you have to do something like this. Like, it's like one of the, that is clearly from the starter set of 5th edition. Like, it's very particularly and so it's like, it's an expectation. And I think that's an interesting way to look at it. What are the expectations people have when you want to start a game? Do you have exactly what everyone else experiences? Like, this is a whole other discussion, because like you were saying, Thea, it's drawing from all these different sources. I've had 3 decades worth, 4 now, okay, getting into 4, a lot of decades worth of experience in this. At least 1st edition, we'll go with that. There were particular milestone games that lots of people played, and that you refer to and go, oh yeah, I want to play that kind of game, or something like that. Like the Village of Homelet, if people know what that is, that's a very particular game. It had a very particular experience, and it was like a rite of passage, let alone something like, what's the dungeon, the ridiculous one where everyone dies?
Dungeon.
The
The TBK one.
Tomb of Horrors. So it's like,
the OG.
that's
Tomb of Annihilation.
Tomb of Annihilation was the extrapolation of
Yeah,
it.
it was
That's
called
actually,
Tomb
they
of
did it for
Horrors.
5th edition.
Yeah.
But the Tomb of Horrors thing, that's a whole other level of like game, and that's a particular expectation. And it's like, I felt like this was like, oh, we're going back to hearkening to what those original things were like as well. So again, I just keep coming back to, what are the expectations we're setting up for it all?
Yeah.
How do we push it?
Yeah.
It ties into a comment that Nerida's made in the chat as well. Like, because sorry, shouldn't say she. They're asking about video games and whether that difference to TV and media, where you've got a set narrative where the expectations are there. And then video games where it's still set though. There's still branching storylines. I don't know, and I could 100% be wrong here. I don't think there are any games out there that have procedurally generated plot.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of, but
give it 3
I
weeks.
could be wrong.
If someone's not literally working on that right now with this chat interaction, again, I'll say it for like, if you can think of a way that chat could be, like any of these AI chats could be used, it is already happening. I know for a fact that there is I don't know what game or software or what it is. It might even be VR chat or something, but I know for a fact that someone has put an NPC, an avatar, in to a game that you can interact with, and it's linked with ChatGPT, not ChatGPT specifically, but their API. So
Yeah.
it's done. It's already happening. So yeah, you could
Yeah.
have, but again, is that a specifically trained tool? Like, we're just going to keep rehashing over these same things. Is like, is that just the
Mm.
tool in a game, or is it a specific AI thing that has been created and serves that purpose? Because yes, at the end of the day, a video game is also like, it's always just been a certain amount of data that we could physically fit on something. Now it's how much can we reasonably download and be okay with on our hard drives. But when you have something that creates out of a data set and you don't necessarily, like, do you need the entire data set? Like, could this be on my mobile? Do I have to be linked to the internet? Yeah, obviously that's fine if it is, but yeah, you would otherwise have to put in every single choice. You have to program it in. You have to give it all of those choices.
Yeah.
There's definitely games that do such a beautiful. I mean, there's we could talk about video games that do beautiful storytelling, and then there's also
Yeah.
games that are just mechanically satisfying, and the story is good enough to ride through. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's when we're talking about different media and the way that we consume it and interpret it, I think we definitely take little bits of inspiration from all sorts of places. And if we're taking inspiration from these AI tools, I don't see any issues with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, sorry if I got
Like,
distracted there.
Okay.
no, that's okay.
Mm.
Here's I'll bring up then Hoji the Elder last week. Thank you for this note as well. It said, counting this test particularly as a success because a time limit was set and ignored as we were having fun. And
True.
That is fair.
agree. I think
Mm.
that's a really good point. I mean, that's actually, it's more of a point. There's not, I don't know if I can add anything more to that. I
No,
think it was
it
really
really
nice
says
to
it
say
really
that as
says it
well,
all. Yeah.
Well, I think that's
which is
because
cool.
we got to that point. We were like, oh, this is our half hour. This is where we think we wrapped up. But we were also, I remember the decision. It was like, we really want to start this combat. We really want to see what happens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that is a credit to the way that the tool was producing responses.
Mm.
I mean, credit to us because we are great. But I think we wanted to explore and test. And since our goal was having fun, we were having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
That actually ties into a thought that I had as well. I made a couple of notes. I was thinking that it was really interesting that the three of us, as fairly experienced DMs, immediately went for chaos options. Like, we tried a few options to follow the good player
Yeah,
thing.
to split the party,
But
etc.
yeah, we split the party within the first 3 comments, I think.
Yeah, it was I go and follow. Yeah, me and
Yeah.
Purdy went and I think that was it. She comes up to us, tells us what she wants. I follow her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
We
stayed
all followed
behind.
her.
Yeah.
Oh no, didn't we? I can't remember if you all came.
I
Oh,
think
you
it
stayed
was
behind.
We
Whatever.
it was Ian
immediately,
and Purdy, wasn't it?
I'll have a look. I'll have a look.
we immediately
Got it right.
follow. No, we
We all
immediately
watch her leave, then we follow her through the streets
Yeah.
from a safe distance, and then
Yep.
we
Yeah.
decided to split up. So it's like, what do you want to do? We were like, okay, we'll stay here. You guys go. And then that was when the oddest thing happened, which was we had followed her to a building. We saw a secret knock.
Yep.
Then you guys left, met up with her at a
Yep. That's when we
sometime
split.
later,
That's when we split.
Yeah.
right? And we did a sometimes later. And then she said, oh, you guys are late. That's weird and awkward. And then proceeded to tell you that her thing that had been stolen was where we had just followed her. And we only touched on it briefly towards the end, but I think that's a really interesting thing because I had come up with my own headcanon, my own theory, and what I would have wanted the story to be in my mind. And I can't speak for anyone else because that's what I thought was going to happen. And I think even now that I've thought about it again, I've come up with another new theory. So,
But what's really interesting is to find out if this pattern recognition tool, if it does plot twists, if that's part of the pattern.
That's
Is there
what I
a
was thinking.
broader pattern? Yeah.
Yeah, is there a
Or is
metaphor?
I think,
Yeah.
like you
meta.
said, that whole, how much of the pattern it can hold on to. And this is something that we're going to look at down the track. There was a topic that we're going to look at about the GM, the gaming of GMing, and what a GM has to keep track of
Yeah.
and the number of things that you're keeping track of as a GM if you want to have, depending on the level of immersion of your story. And that's actually, I can't wait to talk about that, because I don't know what the level of this AI was able to do that.
Yeah.
I wanted to I wanted to suggest something slightly different, because you said it was chaos that we went for straight away. We chose chaos, but I actually would like to amend that slightly. I think it was calculated chaos. I think, because we talked about
Oh yeah,
beforehand, we want to test the
premeditated.
boundaries of this, and
Mm.
we got to this point and went, let's test it now. Let's split the
Yep.
party,
Yep.
or can we contact the others to let them know straight away?
Yeah.
Let's not choose these options. Let's
Yes.
choose something else
Yep.
Yeah.
and see what it does. And there's interesting
Yeah.
responses, that's for sure. So
Guess that has a
there was one last.
parallel. Yeah, so just quickly, that does have a parallel
Yeah.
between having a group that is primed for the session that you as a GM are trying to run, and a game that
Yep.
is not players who are not primed for cooperation. So if you say to everybody, "Hey guys, we're doing this. We want to do this. This is what we're trying to do." Everyone agrees. Great. We didn't do that. We did right.
Yeah.
We're going to poke this DM. We're going to prod him. We're going to test him, and we're going to do the chaotic again. Chaotic's not the unexpected thing. We took what it was trying to give us, and we did the unexpected thing, and that will and does happen very regularly as a GM. So
Yeah. Out of the 3 potential options your players can take, they will usually take the 17th.
Yeah. I think that's about right. I was going to
I like
mention one last thing before. Oh no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just sort of thinking. I was just going to say I'm really curious how the rest of that adventure would have gone, and strongly advocating we explore that sometime.
Yep, 100%.
Actually, on that, I was gonna prompt that in a second. I thought there was one last thing just before we go into what would we do next if we do this again. There was one note that was from Pedicious as well from last week.
Mm.
I like that we wrote a prompt that didn't include Jared's character and her character at the time.
Mm.
So the chatbot gave 2 suggestions for bringing them back in. And so it was like not even suggesting against splitting the party. It was looking for ways to bring them back in more than one option. I thought that was very
Yeah.
interesting too. Yeah.
Mm.
And I
Yeah, it's a
liked
good
that.
point.
I thought that was good.
Yeah, it'd be lovely
That's-
to know why.
Yeah.
I would also
Yeah.
like to do a very similar thing where I think we all go in and we have maybe a less investigative and less prodding approach to the AI, and we all go in to have fun, but what we are analyzing is our experiences. And again, like maybe we take
Yeah.
notes of like where I think the story is going at any given time.
Yeah.
And to
that would be
to
good.
kind of in parallel,
Yeah.
we could all write our own notes.
Milestone points.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
could be
Yeah.
like, right, I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool or interesting or whatever. And then we actually learn more about how our reactions to it and where we thought it was going, because it would be interesting to either take it in those. Again, that's the thing, is we could all be like, hey,
Yeah.
I think this is happening. Where do we want it to go?
Yeah.
Because an open-ended tool like this, we don't know how much it's predetermined and pre-established. So we can and we will do anything. So
Yeah. And it's not a planning tool. It's not a decision-making tool. It's not any of those things. It's a language chatbot designed to emulate human responses. Yeah. We have to do this. We are
That's the
finishing
thing.
this game.
What would we want to do? So we can head into that there. And I just wanted to mention what I think it was Kit Kat had noticed as well there. We introduced variables in a controlled environment. The chaos was the science. And I completely agree. I think that's exactly what it was for. But if
Definitely not our natural state.
when we do this again, like what would we want? What would we want to do? I wish we could continue that specific story, but it feels like we could never get back to that point. We'd actually have to kind of do it from scratch and just take it from there.
Probably pick up from that point.
we could
Anyway.
Could we?
Again, I'll reestablish how this chat, like all of these things work, is whatever we feed it, it will immediately give us feedback on. So if I did take the 5th edition system reference document, the free basic rules, and I took the time to put it in one chat allocation at a time, and I said, please read this and let me know when you've read it, I am priming it. I am setting up, again, as Kit Kat was saying, more controlled environment, more variables. And then when we say, okay, Jared, Ian, and Thea and Purdy might have been tiefling druids, barbarian
Yep.
exact whatever, right? We can then define that
Bard.
with
It was a
a character
bard.
sheet. You were a paladin bard.
Palabard.
Yeah,
don't know.
again, like we didn't
Halibut.
give it anything, it added something. So the more we
Mm.
give it, the less it's guessing. If we take
Yeah.
its guesswork
yeah.
out and then we say come up with the most like from this point onwards,
Mm.
come up with the most incredible, mind-boggling,
Mm.
plot twisting, meta, something.
Yeah.
No doubt it will be capable. No doubt.
There are so many directions.
Yeah.
I think we might
Mm.
have another channel. We have to launch another channel just testing AI in games.
Just
I was-
That's it.
I would-
You know, the
I would
empire
love-
grows.
role-playing stuff.
I would love to continue that very game, but did it? It would have to remember everything that happened there, wouldn't it?
It
It'd have
does.
to have that in the background. So it has that information. We can say, can we pick up from where we left
Yeah,
off?
absolutely. Well, as we sort of talked
Sweet.
about in our meeting during the week, I went to look for it so that I could review the chat, and it was not available. ChatGPT had disabled history for a moment. Whenever you start a chat
Okay.
with ChatGPT, that chat is like an instance. That is like an individual snippet,
Yeah.
a little knot that you've pulled away from the mass that is the AI brain, and you've gone, right, I'm going to curate you, I'm going to mold you, I'm going to shape you, and I'm going to turn you into. And the quickest tip that the first AI, tip that anyone should learn if they want to interact with these is prime it very simply by saying, as an expert in such and such a field, or as a, if we said run this as a professional game master, run this in the style of Matt Mercer, who knows what it could have done, but we didn't ask it that. So
Yeah.
Get us
if
sued is
you
probably.
give it a stance, a perspective, a realm of understanding, you could even say, like, as a master such and such technician, explain to me how to replace a rocker seal gasket or a camshaft sensor in a friggin' car engine. And I have no doubt it will do that. But how well is it going to explain it? Is it going to break it down into enough steps? Is it going to assume how much knowledge you have? But then you tell it, I don't know cars. Break this down as done as possible. It does what you ask it to do and nothing more. Yeah.
Yeah.
For now.
And I think that's the key thing. It does what you ask it and nothing more.
Yeah, and it needs to stay that way. I say for now, but I really meant to say as it should be. Yeah. Well,
There's the ethics.
I
and
mean,
the
that's the
boundaries.
thing.
That's
It's
another
like,
thing to
because
explore.
if it's doing things like
yeah.
in a creative environment like this, we want it to do unexpected things. So we're going to ask it to do unexpected things. But if I'm asking it to write me an article that is informative, I don't want it to add, yes, and the duck is a majestic thing, but bubblegum is also a very enjoyable substance.
Yeah.
What?
But going back into like
Yeah.
using it in search engines, which is where I think a lot of this AI is going. If I search for how do I replace the gaskets on a rocker seal, I want it to be accurate.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't
Well,
want it to come up with a
yeah.
creative solution right then.
Yeah, I already have
That's
Write
good.
Sonic as it automatically adds a chat whenever I search something in Google on my computer now. So I've got both. Whenever I Google something now, it is providing me a summary of that information, because I'm not going to Google how to change a rocker cover gasket. I'm going to say, oh, what is a rocker cover gasket? And it's going to give me that information. Or it's going to say, this is a procedure that is carried out on a vehicle when such and such happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something interesting that in terms of what we set the expectations for this AI and our role-playing game experience, our session 0, if you want to call it, was very minimal. And it was literally
non-existent.
just those few words.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's interesting when you do compare that to if you do have something that's a session 0 to go through, here are the players that you're going to deal with. Here's the kind of rule set that we want to go with. Here's the kind of world and the kind of the nuance we want. And here's the style of game we want to play, which is going to have, it's going to be very much Lord of the Rings, but with Monty Python all the way through it. Like if you said something that specific and say, and do it in the vein of Matt Mercer, for example, then it's like, it takes all of that and then it starts going with that. And that's a session 0. That's the whole thing. So it's like, I would love to play this again with something very particular that we wanted to set up and that we could continue. And I'd be very interested if we could go from like we could stop a session and then just continue it on at another time.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know if that's possible.
absolutely. I could
Yeah,
literally
because that
do.
would
I
be
could
interesting.
start it right this second because it keeps the history, and that's the
Mm.
beautiful thing is I can feed it, like I said, an entire system reference document, and then it's there,
Yeah,
and then it's done, and it's enabled. All the, I mean, chat,
and it
you
tracks
know,
us
OpenAI could turn it
playing
off
it.
like that and
Yeah,
disable my account, but it's still there.
So
yeah.
I see options here. We either go
Okay.
into a 7-hour session back with our AI GM, or do we have any last thoughts on this experience?
Oh man, I think we've said
It
quite
was
a
fun.
lot. Yeah.
It was, yeah, I think we said a lot in there. I mean, more than anything, it was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
We barely tested. I mean, we got a sense of the
Mm,
testing, I think, and I'm really glad that it was not. Yeah, we all agree that it was a really successful test, but it was like
mm,
scratching the
It opened
surface.
more questions than it
Um,
answered.
100%.
yeah, and for repercussions of how this plays over time, we don't really know because that would actually
Mm,
have to be done. I think so.
mm,
I definitely, I'd feel like this would be something to explore again, and
yeah.
in a longer
Dang,
form.
we have to
Yeah.
do it more for
Yes.
science and
Oh, you know what?
we do it for the
Guys, why don't
community
we
with
do this in a stream?
I'd be very keen to see what things
yeah.
people would want
We
to
could do
see
like yeah,
too,
we could
as
do
if
like a
we have an
2-3 hour
audience
stream.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be
We
good
could
to
have a full
involve
game.
you out there and see how we could
absolutely.
actually
Yeah.
do this,
Mm.
I love
so
the
that it
idea of
also
a
makes
chat
it
player.
very interactive.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
love to
Yeah.
have a
I
chat
think so
player,
too.
and what I'm
Yep.
thinking is we put a poll or something in the Discord where we get
Yeah.
to have people maybe further define these boundaries of our world. I may even go
Yeah.
so far as to try and put in a condensed SRD or some kind of a rules light thing
Mm,
so that we can have the challenges and it understands that we want to play within the realm of these rules.
mm,
We want the common language, the dialogue, and we need that risk reward system and the spells and skills
Yeah,
and everything, the
mm,
tools that let us interact with our play pretend world.
mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. But I
yeah.
feel any thoughts
Mm.
from you, Ian? I think we both were saying, do you have thoughts?
Oh,
No,
I
no. Do
said
you?
mine.
Do you?
I said mine already. What about yours, Thea?
Look, I think this is a really useful tool. I think that it is something that we shouldn't be scared of. And that's not just
Mm,
AI in gaming. I think that is
Yeah,
AI in general. I think there
yeah.
is a lot of fear,
yeah,
and that's valid. Like those responses are 100% valid because this could be
Mm.
really terrifying and dangerous.
Yeah.
There is
yeah,
potential for this to cut the human element out, but I think there would be
yeah.
an enormous amount lost if that happened. Um,
Mm,
I weirdly, for such a cynic, I don't have such a dim view of humankind that I think that will happen. I
mm,
think that we will be
agreed.
able to learn to use this tool in a positive, ethical way. But I
Mm,
had so much fun, and I get to reflect on myself as a player, and I'm guessing you guys are the same
yeah.
because we DM so much. When you get to be a
Mm.
player, it's great, and
Yeah.
I so want to do that again.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Well, I
I
think
think it's amazing for groups of like DMs and also
Yeah.
for people who are in remote access. You know,
mm,
I've heard of these, you know, you
Mm.
be online long enough with these communities, you see people reaching out who are in remote little small towns that won't even have a game store. They'll
Mhm.
never see a physical book in a game store. They have to order this stuff
Yeah.
or completely do it online. And they don't know what the face-to-face experience is like, or they don't even
Mhm.
know who, like, again, now that we have the internet and the community and fifth edition's blown up, that's not so much a thing. But again, like, what
Mm.
if there's people who would normally reach out to someone like myself, a professional GM, to take them through the first
Mm.
steps, whereas you could really just grab a mate, jump on, like, and have a
Mm.
little dabble. Just be like, hey, we don't
Yeah.
even know
yeah,
what D&D is, and it will actually.
Yeah.
Again, we also, just to summarize, with ChatGPT, it was the only AI tool that I had tested that would actually go, okay, I am the dungeon master and
Mm.
I will run this for you. Everything else I've said
Yep.
mm,
is trying to be a teacher, it's trying to explain or give me information,
Um,
not
Yep.
do what
yeah,
it did. So there's
Mm.
something to be said about that.
yeah.
Mm.
That's very cool in the sense of that actually could be a good learning tool for new DMs to actually just engage with that to learn how it does that if they're
Mm.
isolated from others as well. They have a chance to actually
Yeah.
learn, okay, here's how it makes decisions, it gives options, things like that, and you could model your DMing on that, which
Yeah,
is a really
or
good introductory way to
that's
do
what
it,
I
I
was
think.
just thinking
Yeah.
is again, I
Yeah.
as forever DMs, and I'm not even joking, I have played a handful of times. I don't know what the consumer or the player experience is. You know, like you are producing
Yeah.
again, like a product. Like I want to say consumer and product for a strange reason, because I feel like that defines it a little bit more. Is you are producing something that is to be consumed and is to be enjoyed,
Yeah.
and to actually like, it's like a chef who never tastes their own food. You do get to a point where you've created enough of these
Yep.
dishes where you feel, you know, and you kind of go through the
Mm.
motions, and like you make the same sandwiches every day, the same dishes every day. But at the end of the day, you do need to just pick a random muffin out of the tray and just check it, because you know you've put the right ingredients in. But damn, that blueberry distribution, that's all over the place. Why is there 6 blueberries on the bottom, none on the top? That's an unappealing muffin. Come on. So is your game an unappealing muffin? Can you use chat AI to make it better and reflect on your own experience? This
Somebody
is going.
clip that. That is fantastic.
I went a place.
That's going to be
Is
the
your
name
I
of
game
one
forced
of
the
our
an
analogy.
future,
unappealing
I think I forced the
episodes.
analogy.
Is your game an unappealing muffin? I think that's only people who've watched
You
this
have the
will know
right
what that means.
ingredients, but why aren't you having fun? It's a topic
Guys,
for another time.
It's clipped.
on that note, I think it is time. We'll have to wrap up from here, because this has been fantastic. So I am looking forward to doing this again. But it is time to wrap up this social pillar of our gaming lives. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us again tonight. But join us next week. We'll be back again. We'll have a conversation and new role-playing game topic to discuss. Thea, would you like to introduce what that is?
Yeah, good question. I have notes.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the game of gaming. Who came up with that? Was that
The
me?
game, was it the game of gaming or the game of GMing?
The
The
art
game
of
of game
gaming?
the game
Game
of
of
game
GMing.
Yeah,
mastering.
game of game mastering. Game master.
The
I think,
mastering
but
the game.
yeah, it
Yeah.
kind of came out. So we want to talk about some of the skill sets that you use as a game master. Not just can you read the rules and can you interpret them, but what are those other things? What is the information you're picking up from your players and how you're responding to it? What is the theater of running a game? Because I think that is really important. I think so many GMs are performers, and it's all musicians where you are playing your players in a really positive, supportive way. Don't clip that.
As an
But
orchestra,
that is what
in a
we
way.
talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, as an orchestra, we sort of,
Yeah.
but also in something that
Or
you're
a troupe.
collaborative and you're part of. So I think that's something that is really important to talk about. And so we'll be talking about, what are the skills and the necessities and kind of what we think people should be prepared for when they come into a game. I mean, we talked about it tonight. We talked about the theater of the dice roll. When someone rolls an insight check and they get a 2 versus when they get a 19,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
how do you play
And
that?
how do you fly with that as a DM?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how much do you reveal of your story and
All the
Yeah.
things.
Or just rolling
yeah.
random dice. Like that
Yeah.
kind of the timing of that. I think
Yeah.
that is, So that is what we're going to be talking about next week. It is going to be an awful lot of fun. I'm also going to jump in real quick. You may not know we launched our YouTube channel. So if you can't get enough of us on Twitch, you can now get enough of us on. Wait, that didn't sound right. You can now have enough of us on YouTube.
More than enough.
Yeah, there's never enough. But
There's
yes,
more
we
of
have
us.
our YouTube channel. Please do check that out.
Yeah.
I'm putting that.
Do we have a
in the
link?
Now, yeah, right
I have a
now.
link.
That
Link is in the chat. Look at that.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Chat. Cool.
But yes, the social pillar. Check it out. But yeah, videos on demand so far. We may be looking at more content later on. We still want to grow this. This is something that's been a lot of fun for all of us. And we want to be able to reach out and connect with as many people as possible. So YouTube is step 2-ish.
Step 2 on the path.
But yeah,
Phase
but
2.
do please come back next week. Join us on the Discord. Does anyone have a link for the Discord? Have we got commands set up yet? I
Exclamation mark
bet.
Discord. Yes, we do. I think that link
Wow.
is the broken one though, so I need
Oh,
to fix that in the
good.
back end.
It's
I'll
coming.
get you guys a
It's
link
coming.
right now.
Our skills are growing too. We might be professional dungeon masters. We may not be so good on IT support, but
There we
we
go.
are
It is in
getting
there.
there.
We're
Nice.
always
Use the
learning.
bottom link.
That's what I
But
love
yes,
about it.
that's where we're going. Join us.
Yeah.
Ian, do you want to wrap this game up?
Can do. I think, yeah. Wrapping up,
Let's
guys. We're
go.
wrapping. This is it. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. This has been the Social Pillar, and we're looking forward to next week. And hopefully, you'll join us and have more of these discussions about role-playing games in our world next week. Thanks so much for
Bye for
joining
now.
us.
Awesome.